Hi everyone and a very warm welcome. India's biggest advantage lies in its demographics. We are the world's second largest population and account for close to about 20% of the world's population. 40% of our population is under the age of 20 years. It is our collective responsibility to raise financially savvy children. It is not just about investments, but it is about budgeting, planning, earning, as well as investing. To understand how one should approach this, I am joined in by Mr. Swaroop Mohanty. He needs no introduction. He is the CEO at Mirai Asset Management Company Limited and is credited with running one of the most disciplined fund houses in the country. Thank you, sir, for joining in, and I hope you're doing well.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was having a casual conversation with him. I understand where his money management skills come from, and that is primarily because of his mother, who is apparently a great risk taker. Probably that explains how his principles and how his basic tenets or requirements of investments have come in. So, sir, let me begin by asking you, which as advisors, we often face the challenge that even investors close to after a decade of experience are only invested probably in fixed deposits or in endowment plans. More often they tell us that, they weren't aware of it, it was never taught to them, etc. So do you think that educational institutes need to play a big role as far as imparting this education is concerned? And, unfortunately, the NEP, which has also been rolled in, does not address this. So what would be your take on this?
No, you couldn't have said it better when you look at the country perspective and you look at the demography of India. And we are this unique country where when the rest of the world is getting older, we are getting younger. And then from that perspective, you also have to add over the last 20, 30 years, the economic standard of the average population of this country has also been rising, right? So the way the things were is definitely not going to be the way things will be. Yeah. From that perspective, I do believe that if we have to go on and build a big nation and the nation will belong to the young, then they have to become financially literate at a formative age, if I were to put it. And that age starts very early in their school. And it's very essential and it's just in the selfish interest of the overall country that some amount of financial planning or financial literacy starts at a school level. I would say that, as early as class 8 because those the teens are the right age when you can absorb a slightly higher kind of an education, maximum or the latest by class 9 is what I would put it. I mean, I would have really liked it if it were there in my school days. It would have saved me a lot of hard struggles in my early days of investing. But I really hope and pray that we start, and I'm really happy that people like you are raising this issue, and because it is definitely an issue. The quicker the literacy comes, the better they are able to make good with whatever earnings come their life. The basic thought process is that if you earn a lot, you are taken care of. That is where financial literacy comes in. Your earnings can do not matter for your financial well-being. Even with whatever earning you have, if you plan yourself well, your financial well-being can be taken care of. And that's something, if it dawns very early in a child's life, a lot of changes can happen.
Right, sir. I completely agree with you. It doesn't matter how much, but starting is the biggest key. But sir, let me understand this from you from a social perspective. And I'm sure, you would agree with me on the fact that, people don't even discuss investments with their spouses. So, discussing this with their children, is it too much of a ask? And do we really need to undergo a key mindset change, while coming to terms with this?
You couldn't have you've nailed it. Actually, it is a social mindset. And let's go back the last 20, 30 years of the country. And I come from Odisha, where it's not exactly, when I grew up, was and still is not one of the most economically forward state of the country. So when I grew up, I grew up with the environment that money for children is bad. If you give money to children at a younger age, they get spoiled. The fact is, money was not there. and I believe that, these were phrases made to sort of get those things out of a child's mind. But if you go back, and I go back to my school days, and I reflect on those years of my life, there were two types of children who came to my school. One who came from my background, which was a middle class. My parents were professors in college, so from an education background, and there were enough kids who came from the business background. They didn't feel that way, right? There was a clear difference in mindset between them and us. We definitely felt that, money would spoil us in our earlier days. So when I've been brought up with that mindset, talking about money does not come naturally to us. It comes to people from a business background. It comes naturally to them. They're bred in that environment. But for bulk of India who come from a salaried class, talking about money is not natural. Hence, these very deep-rooted issues of not being able to talk about money. If you have it also, you can't talk it. More important, if you don't have it, then you can definitely not talk about it. While that is when you should be talking about it the most. There is nothing wrong in not having money. What is wrong is not talking about it. But if it is so deep rooted in me from my childhood, it becomes difficult to change overnight. I am very thankful to my area of work, which has changed me. But I would definitely understand some person like me who's grown up in that manner to be able to talk about money very freely with the spouse, with the child, never. Forget, and that's something which you advisors would be facing. The transparency of money does not come very easily, but the more transparent that it becomes, the more easy it becomes to find a solution to it. But I understand the background to it, and I do believe it is changing, but it is changing fast. I think the next generation will be a very different generation, and they will approach this in a far open and far, in their language, a chilled out manner than we were, I think.
Right, and I completely understand what you're talking because I'm raised in the East as well. I'm from Calcutta, and we know that, being grounded and, not talking about taboo subjects is something that is an inherent way of bringing up children. So I completely resonate with what you are saying. So, sir, I understand you have almost a young son now. So, at what age did you start having a discussion with him? I mean, was it more, and how did you plan your discussions with him in his early years?
See, I mean, the thing that I learned about this whole thing, I must be thankful to my parents also, is that they were very clear to me about their salaries. Both my parents were teachers in colleges, and they told me this is our salary, and since we are two, we are able to afford a private school for you. And because of that openness, I mean, with me and my son, money is not an issue. He knows exactly. I remember it was very early. He was in his class one, I think, and I was just changing jobs, and I had a 2-day sort of break, and I went to pick him up at the school bus. I said, "Why are you not going to office? Who will get the money?" So he's very clear on that. But I think to really get serious about it, I'm very thankful that both my wife and I have been very open about discussing the money we have, and more important, the money which we don't have. Because at the end of the day, he has to be brought up in an environment of transparency. We started pretty early with him, and I think by the time he was in class 8, 9, or 10, he was aware of our salaries. He was aware of what we can afford, or what, more important, what we cannot afford. And it's better to be clear on that. And to be fair to him, I think he's grown up with those kind of things. He knows his needs and wants very clearly. The wants he has to fight for. The needs will be provided is something which he is very clear on. And more transparent you become, I think, is better for us.
That brings me to just a point that, I would like to contemplate with you a little bit more on, which is, can it become like a double-edged sword? Say, for example, say a couple or a parents, who are kind of financially well off, their children will start believing that we have something to fall back on. Or worse still, what you mentioned that, they should know what you don't have. So would it create some kind of psychological pressure on them to just act on the psychologically not well-being of the child, so to say?
See, Vega, as children know, when we reflect on a lot of conversations between our parents and us, there are a lot of times we as kids think maybe our parents should have told us this, right? We would have understood. There's, the autobiography of Charlie Chaplin, where he writes, kids are more smarter than we think. That is why we end up hurting them so much. Not telling them is underestimating their capacity to absorb the situation. I think let's look at it both ways. If the child is talented, or at that formative age is when he or she is open to a lot more information than say I am at my current age. And at that age, if you're not feeding the child with the right, and you're telling the truth, you're not sort of inflating anything, or if you're not doing that with your child, I would say you are completely underestimating the ability of the child's brain. That's the best time when the child can understand you. And I think if we are honest with each other, we have a good journey together. To answer your other question, if there is a lot, then the child can become a little laid back. I don't agree with that. I feel if the child knows that he's taken care of, he or she is taken care of, the child then can develop. And I've seen that with a lot of my friends who have gone out to then express themselves far better than somebody who would not have. Not that the other person has not expressed themselves, but then that child becomes free to do whatever he or she wants. Like for my parents, the advice was very clear: to get a job. And since I was on that track, I carried on into the jack. I mean, I leave the decision to my son. I'm not telling him anything. I come from a mutual fund background. He wants to be a computer geek and he wants to be a programmer. That's his life. But if I tell him that you are free to become a computer programmer, maybe he can become a better one, right? And but he should know that the only thing I tell him that my parents are not dependent on me, and we will not be dependent on you. So it works both ways. At some point of time, he has to be financially free, and that discussion is also done with him. Like the day I started working, I stopped taking money from my parents. So I want that from him too. And it's a clearly laid out discussion. It's up to him to earn whatever he is, and within that he has to live. So it's better to be transparent, and I feel if they know, then they can back themselves better, and I think it will give them that ability. And the young today are far more confident than we were because of the availability of data and information. And I do believe that they can then be free in their minds to pursue their dreams far better than what used to happen, say, 30 years ago when I was a young child.
Fact, we totally agree to your point because there are a lot of behavioral studies which indicate that over a period of time, we have seen significant improvement in self-esteem as well as IQ of future generations with respect to the previous generations. And each decade, there is a significant improvement. So from that point of view, we totally agree to your point that it is futile to underestimate the next generation. Rather, we should learn from them. So my next question is, I'll give you a little background on why that question. So, I was just watching an old interview of Reed Hastings where he said that the competition of Netflix is with sleep. And I'll draw a parallel here. So you are trying to educate a child about financial matters, which is a very, very boring matters even for adults. So when you have, competition from online games, you have competition from Netflix, there is a pressure of study. How do you get the attention of the child to discuss these matters, which are, so to say, very boring and very mundane?
No, I do agree with you on that because the competition is from a different animal nowadays to when I was a child. But you have to make it a little interesting for the child, and then you have to start a little young. You can do small things, and then when you are young at a child, you can definitely introduce the piggy bank. That's my personal experience. But don't just give him the piggy bank. I mean, with the piggy bank, you can add a little bit of excitement as a goal. Let's save up for this, and on that day you give the great pleasure to the child to break it and go himself or herself to buy that stuff. And you can, and once he or she gets hooked on it, the piggy bank becomes a very interesting thing. The great Robert Kiyosaki has always told that encourage the child to play Monopoly very early, because then you introduce some very basic concepts of say the rent, taxes, how you can buy mortgage, very early in their career, and more important, introduce the concept of passive income at that age. And as a result of that, any child of that age, if I am called to a birthday party, the gift is always a monopoly to them. I would definitely also encourage parents to start what do you call, the pocket money very early in their life. But when the pocket money is given, I would really request the parents to, definitely make it a mandatory thing to also run an expense statement with the pocket money. I will give you 500 rupees if you write down where you have spent 500 rupees. If at times, it becomes a little difficult for the parent to also say that you have to disclose 500 rupees, you can give in a little bit of caveat. Okay, 100 rupees I will not ask, but 400 you write down. So the process of writing an expense statement or knowing where you have spent comes very early in the life. What I have done with my son is, all the investments that I make in his name go to his email address. So he gets to see the account statement, and this is started pretty early. So he understands that there is an investment, there is an SIP, and if the amount is this, it has become that. Sometimes it goes down, it goes up. So these are small ways of introducing them to the financial world. And the more it is done and the earlier it is done, better. Just one small thing which I'd like to leave behind is, when you look at the future of the country, then the future of the country remains pretty young. I would really encourage parents to go out and look at the responsibility part of the kids, and very early in their lives bring in this small factor of paying taxes. What is the problem of our country? The problem of our country is people are not paying taxes. And if it's built in at a very early age that paying taxes, and today if you see, the country is rewarding you with a certificate of whether you are a platinum, gold or something, you get a certificate. And if you encourage kids to pay their taxes very early and it gets into the mindset, the future of the country can be very different to what it is at this moment. And going forward, if they understand the world of money around them through these small subtle ways. The other thing which I think forgot is, whenever you've given pocket money, please do keep aside one large note as an emergency note. And then build the need for an emergency fund very earlier in their life. If something goes wrong, use this note. Otherwise, this note cannot be used. And suppose my son, who went through his engineering, he knew there was his expense account, but he had another account which was for his emergency because he was staying away from my house. He knows that if something goes wrong, there is a separate fund which he can sort of go back on. All his school life, he had a 500 rupee note in his wallet, which was only for emergency. And I would tell him that I'll check the note number. That number has to remain the same. And that will be used only in the case of emergency. So if you add these small things and then you leave their imagination to take over, I think a lot can be achieved very early.
We have understood that there is a need to impart financial literacy. We have also understood that there are parents now who are a little more active with the idea that they should sit with their children and they should educate them about it. But then it's all about capability also. So
Yep.
we can have somebody who's in aviation, somebody who's a doctor, somebody who's a bureaucrat. At times it might be an issue of capability also, where the desired capability is not there for parents to impart education to their children as far as financial matters are concerned. Do you think within the ambit of today's advisory space, we have people who are taking initiatives to impart education to children? If not, do you think there is a potential business opportunity for a lot of advisor and intermediaries who can create that kind of a knowledge and niche where they can target those next generation investors with a far higher potential return in the future for them?
See, both sides to the story, and I'm very happy you are asking this question, because let's look at it from a family perspective. And when money discussions come out in a far more open manner, the healthier the family becomes, is my personal opinion. So it is very important that the advisors, when they do the planning process with the families, they encourage that the kids come into their process. Suppose there is a child education part of the plan, you should insist that get the child involved in it, because the child should know that the parent has put aside money in a very painstaking manner to go up and build for the education. The respect for that process comes in from the child, definitely. More important, the process of reaching that goal of getting that education through a financial plan also dawns in very early. So if the kids are involved very in this process, it becomes a healthier part to the entire process of discussion between the advisor and the family, and you get a collective sort of involvement in the entire plan where everybody has his or her role. The second part which I'd like to highlight is it's in the selfish interest of the financial advisor to do this. Because trust me, any country which grows, the next generation is definitely far better economically endowed than the previous generation. So if you want succession to your business, it is in our selfish interest that we involve the children, gain the trust, because trust is the basis of our business, right? He or she will watch you over a period of time, and then when you look at succession of your business, you can graduate to them as being your future clients, and they would have seen you guiding their parents to a certain level and giving a tangible part to their monies. And there cannot be a better process of gaining trust than this process. Yes, I do believe that there is a definite role of advisors in this process, both of the future of the business, and more important, if the education system does not gear up to address this issue of financial illiteracy, I believe people like you who are young should come forward and start your own. You will be surprised how many parents would want their children to come and learn this. You will be surprised. I mean, if I had something like this for my son, I would have been very happy to. I'm ready to do that even now. He's just 21. He's going to start his life, and why should I impose my risk-taking ability or my thoughts on him? He should lead his life the way he wants. If somebody can come in and guide him, I think I'll be more happy with that person doing it rather than me doing it to him or her. If we were to look at the future of the country, again, I bring back my first question. It's not about how much we earn, but how we deploy what we earn, which is more important. And that is what is the difference between not being literate and being financially literate. People think that, if to become rich or wealthy, you need a lot of money. Not so. If you have a good process, you can take care of your goals. And that can come in if it is taught. It is not something which is inherited for especially the salaried class. The business class, it's almost become genetic now. They are a very different breed, and I wish I came from that background. I would have understood money far younger in my life than I did, because it is taught.
Totally agree, sir. And whenever we have internal brainstorming, also we realize that there are two segments which are going to decide how advisors shape up their future. One is women investors, second is children, because the decision of investments are going to be taken by these two in future. And one needs a high amount of EQ, and another needs high amount of TQ, which is technology quotient.
Correct.
So I think that's a good food for thought for us to work upon. So now my last question, and that is somehow linked to the first question where we started, which is about collective responsibility. So I'll just take a step back. So whenever we discuss, financial planning with our clients who are middle-aged, approaching 50s, approaching 60s, one of the issues which they always raise is that they didn't start early. Even when they started early, like you mentioned that, at times parents impose their ideas, and they ended up being invested into those ideas which were extremely inefficient, and they didn't serve even the purpose of beating inflation. Now, today's generation, we see there are two kinds of youngsters. One, who are attaching some meaning to the money. They don't want money just to spend. They want to have some meaning. While there are other youngsters also who just don't care about money, and they don't care about their credit profile. We see a lot of P2P companies where youngsters take a loan of 2,000, 3,000 rupees, and they end up defaulting on those loans also. Correct. So I think somewhere we have failed as an industry at a collective way. Though we are seeing some initiatives in the recent times from MFI, like mutual fund sahi hai, from IRDA on insurance, but that also is a very, very product specific and a product targeted approach, and not a financial planning approach or a money management approach. So since you are the leader and you are managing one of the finest AMCs in India, what do you think as industry are some initiatives which you can take, your peers can take, regulator can take, self-regulatory agencies can take, which can improve the quotient of financial planning and financial management among youngsters, so that we have a generation which is investment ready in times to come?
Yeah, Harsh, I completely agree with you on what you've said from the industry perspective. I mean, a lot of us do it at an individual level, maybe go back to smaller kids at schools or institutions and talk about it. But those are one-off sessions which are taken by people who are interested in that. But I think I can promise you one thing at Mirae Asset, thanks to you, we will start something at a generic level for children. Yes, we've done it one off, but there is no structured plan on that. I can assure you that that's a big takeaway from today for me, is to go back and plan something where after a year or two, I can come back, and if we do the same thing, I can say, yes, thanks to both of you, I've gone and drawn up this plan. But yeah, I think at an AMFI level also a lot can be done. I'm sure they are doing. Maybe in the next AMFI meeting, I'll take it up as to what we can do structurally for kids or young adults, as we call them. Uh, uh, the need is definitely there, and the urgency of the need is so large. As you rightly said, at the beginning of my career, I've also gone through, the credit card trap. At that point of time, thankfully, there was no CIBIL. So a bulk part of my life, I've actually gotten away with murder. But that is not true today. What a small default can do for the rest of your life, you'll probably have to go and check up with a consultant to set your CIBIL score right. So I think there is a lot to be done. I think I can promise you that I will act wisely on this, not as an individual level, but as an organization level. We will come back to you. And in 2 years' time, I will thank you for initiating this thought and taking this forward in a far more structured manner. Yeah, you've got me thinking. I must thank you for that.
So thank you so much for being so open to ideas, and with somebody like you giving us that kind of an assurance, we really sure that there is something concrete which will come up our way, and it'll just not be words. Thank you so much for that, sir. And with that, we come to the end of our conversation. And this is a very interesting conversation for us. So one, because we feel about it and we have all been through that. But this is one of the few conversations where the expert not only discuss the philosophies, but also certain tactical ideas also. So to carry home, there are certain good ideas which you mentioned, something like expense statement for pocket money, giving monopoly as a gift to children, which is extremely interesting. Investing in child's name, but not keeping the control with you. Letting those statements and SOAs come to his or her email ID, so that the child himself or herself knows how have been the gains and losses, and there is an ability to understand volatility also, which comes at a very, very young age, rather than opening a PPF account. Last and the most important tactical point which you mentioned, and which is extremely relevant, which we never thought of, is about the taxes example which you gave in terms of paying taxes and involving children in terms of how those things happen. So that was a bit on the tactical part, but on philosophical part, you brought in a very, very interesting thing that, our parents who were middle class at time, they didn't discuss money, not because of certain social thing which was created as a periphery, but it was more to do with not having enough money. And those were the times when expenses and salaries didn't leave much for our parents to invest. And thankfully, they invested in our education and our future, and we have to give credit to them. And the last point, which is a punch for this discussion, which I will carry with me, is that it's more important to let children know what you don't have rather than letting them know what you have, so that there is a balance which is created in the family. And discussion of money matters create families which are happier rather than families which are greedier. So that's my takeaway. And I really have to thank you for taking out time, spending so much time to make us understand those nuances, which we would have been aware, but we never thought in a very, very conscious way. So thanks a lot. And we promise you, like you promised us, we will also work a lot in that direction. And in a matter of couple of years, we will also have something concrete to tell you as far as next generation's financial planning is concerned. Thank you so much, sir, for your time.
No, thank you. It was really a process of learning for me too. So thank you so much for doing this. Wish you all the best and stay safe.